All right, enough of keyframing. Let's talk about motion capture, the other major animation technique. Motion capture is, of course, the process of encoding motion from the real world into the digital world in all three dimensions. More simply, motion capture is a technique for measuring things. It usually measures distance, speed. Used cleverly, it can be used to measure the motions of the human body. Once that's actually recorded, that motion can be used to drive a digital character or breathe life into inanimate objects. We've all seen those cliche almost at this point motion capture suits. Somebody is in a full-length bodysuit, one color, with all, what appears to be little tracker markers or ping pong balls all over them. That's the computer recording their movements. Now, they're actually moving away from tracking markers and those full suits because it can just record yourself without all that stuff on there. But here's a shot of Tom Hanks and the comparison of Tom Hanks in the movie Polar Express. So the most common use for motion capture is, of course, to capture the human body, to capture human motion, and apply it to a digi-double. And by the way, a digi-double is basically an exact CG duplicate of a real person or, character in a film. In this manner, high fidelity character animation can be delivered at a price point and in a time frame that's not practically achievable by other methods. So it gets a lot of animation done real quick. It's a lot faster for Tom Hanks to act out the scene than it would for animators to animate it out. Entire films can be made with motion capture, such as Disney's 2009 A Christmas Carol. The biggest factor to weigh is whether the desired animation outcome is a lifelike look or something more stylized. Motion capture or hybrid mocap keyframed approaches are ideal for scenarios where more lifelike performances are desired. Now, if price is not an issue, the company may look into building out a facility and purchasing its own system. That's pretty common. If the company doesn't have extremely deep pockets for long-term production forecasts, it's better to outsource this stuff, unless you're going to do an entire movie or a lot of projects on it. The cost has come way down on motion capture systems, camera systems, and of course the software to do it all, which is nice. Performance capture is actually different than motion capture. They're two different things. Performance capture is a term that usually refers to a subcategory of motion capture where just the actor's face is recorded simultaneously. That's the important thing. It's usually the actor's face. So as you can see, here's the actor doing Avatar. And the reason why it's a little bit different process is because the face has a lot more nuances than full body motion capture. Full body motion capture is good for capturing basically large or gross mechanical movements of the human body, like running, falling, jumping, that kind of a thing. You're not going to get very detailed expressions of a face with motion capture. With performance capture, you put a lot more dots on the face. It's measuring things a lot more discreetly. And then they also have a witness cam right on there to help the animators and to record all those dots and everything like that. So it's basically like super detailed motion capture, but it's for the face. Now, one of the most famous people to do this motion capture and performance capture is a guy named Andy Serkis. With the animators and technicians, Andy has advanced the art of performance capture, where an actor's movements and expressions are translated into CGI to bring a film character to life. You may not recognize this man, but you've seen his work, no doubt, if you enjoy movies and if you enjoy visual effects. So far, he has provided the acting for characters. He was Gollum in Lord of the Rings. He also provided the voice. He was King Kong in King Kong. He was Caesar, still is Caesar in the Rise of the Planet of the Apes in that franchise. Recent releases include Tintin and The Hobbit. Andy has founded the Imaginarium Studios in London to foster performance capture and kind of create a new art form and to give people a lot more appreciation and for this craft. He is a big proponent of pushing the fact that performance capture artists should be considered regular actors and be considered for the roles of Best Actor, Best Actress in Academy Awards and British Awards. Some of Andy Serkis's roles, as you can see, he's all over the place. Right? Andy Serkis has appeared in over 70 motion pictures and television productions and over 60 theater productions, actually. And his world-leading performance capture artist and contributed his varied talents as actor, director, writer to several popular video games. He was also instrumental in bringing the Jungle Book's sequel to life as well. He directed that as well. Andy's work has been recognized with numerous acting awards and nominations, including Emmys, Golden Globes, SAG Awards, all kinds of good stuff. He's a name you should know, especially in performance capture, motion capture, CG characters. Let's take a little look of some work by Andy Serkis.
War for the Planet of the Apes is probably the most evolved performance capture that is seen to date. But when I think back to Lord of the Rings and where it all started, there's been such a huge journey in terms of the evolution of the technology, the hardware, the cameras, the software, everything that goes into transforming an actor's performance into an avatar character. Motion capture came out of the medical industry, but then it was used in early video games. So that would be by using a suit with retro-reflective markers placed at joints in the body, the information of which is then piped into a computer that provides then an electronic skeleton, which is then added to an animated rig. So the process of shooting on Lord of the Rings was to go on set and work with the other actors on location. Then we'd have to do a second pass with the camera. I would stand off to the side and then they would react to a ball on a stick and they would then capture their performances. Then I would go back to a motion capture studio where I'd climb into the motion capture suit. They would play back the scenes that I'd been working on and I would be able to see on the screen in real time a representation of Gollum. So if I lifted up my right hand, Gollum's arm would raise. And if I twisted my body, it would totally move in sync with my movements. It was in effect being like a puppeteer and marionette at the same time. The next film that I worked on was King Kong. The difference this time round was that it made the transition from motion capture to performance capture because I was wearing 132 retro-reflective markers on my face, which were assigned to muscle groups that would then directly drive the digital mask of King Kong, all of which were picked up by a bank of cameras, only 180-degree field, so I couldn't turn my back. The basis of the character design, the actor sees from a very early point. So you see, I knew that his facial design was going to accentuate some of my own facial structure. So this is where we get the transition to what we call performance capture. It's capturing audio, facial, and body all at the same time. The task in post-production is always going to be that ability to take the actor's performance and actually interpolate that performance whilst retaining it, but also putting it onto the physiognomy of an ape. So it's almost like looking at a costume that you're going to put on and choose as an actor, and you find a relationship between yourself and the avatar. Then the next significant change was Tintin. And this was when we started to introduce head-mounted cameras. So this allowed the actor to be shot in 360 degrees. It meant that you were untethered and therefore could move about and play your part very naturally. The next significant change was taking everything out of the motion capture studio and being able to shoot on location. And this happened with the Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So this was the first time that we had this real synergy and ability to create the scene once in camera, both using traditional film cameras, but also motion capture cameras and boom mounted cameras for facial expressions. Now this was still interiors. This was, for instance, in Rise for the Planet of the Apes, it was the house that Caesar was brought up in, and they also built a section of San Francisco Bridge for the climactic end sequence, where there were upwards of, I think, 200 motion capture cameras placed all along a stretch of purpose-built set. The next jump forward was then taking and making all these suits much more robust. And by going outside, we needed to have a slightly different approach to the markers. They were no longer retroreflective, but actually sent out an infrared pulse. So that it meant that we could shoot outdoors in bright light. Dawn took it a stage further by taking it into much more, shall we say, challenging environments, such as the Vancouver rainforests. And when we were shooting in New Orleans, we were at 100% humidity, and the technology had to stand up to all of that. And that, again, was taken to a further extreme in War for the Planet of the Apes, when we were shooting in minus conditions, night shoots, up to our waist in snow. All of this technology had been built to the point where it was incredibly robust now. As well as rendering and the texturing, the fur, the eyes, the hair, the water, the ability to have snow or rain on fur, all of this technology had been evolving so that the simulations were all becoming much more photoreal. So many people think studying the role for Caesar, for instance, is purely about copying ape movements. And to put everybody straight on that, that is really sort of room 101. That's where you begin. After a while, you realise that it's not just about mimicking behaviour. This is about creating a character. So there are all these psychological and emotional journeys that one has to import into the character. So it's not just about the physical build of the character, but the whole internalisation. And that's why the misconception that performance capture acting is a sort of genre or type of acting is completely wrong. It's no different to any process that you go through to create a role, whether you're on stage, in front of a screen in the more conventional sense. The actor's performance is the actor's performance.